Greetings, everyone. I am so excited and honored to be with one of my favorite people in the whole world again, Ke'oni Hanalei. And he is a descendant of the Mu people, really a wisdom keeper of that ancient lineage, an alchemist and founder of Pohala, Esoteric Hawaiian Botanical Medicine, with a deep understanding of the medicinal energies of the ferns, the most ancient life form on the planet. So we have a lot to discuss today in terms of we're going to be focusing on the theme of the meaning of Neptune and what it means to be integrating the gifts of the age of Pisces as we move into the age of Aquarius. But thank you for being here again today, Ke'oni.
Mahalo. Thank you, Heather. Thank you to this audience. It's been so fun to explore with you, Heather. I really love, I feel like you're in a way of this really beautiful extractor. You have such a gift of extracting knowledge from people in a really beautiful, fair, consensual way. And so I always feel really supportive when I have conversations with you, and equally as supported with the audience that continuously tunes in to these conversations. So I just also want to say mahalo. Thank you so much for this audience. And Heather, yeah, Pisces, Neptune, are we responsibly transiting into this beautiful energy of Aquarius? I think this is such an important conversation.
Well, and you and I have already been in a conversation about this before we got on the recording. So let's continue to let this unfold in an organic way, which is very Neptunian. But before we get into it, part of what we were talking about is how profound it is that Neptune right now is in Pisces, squaring the galactic center. And it's been within a 5-degree orb of the galactic center since March of 2022, and it will be there until January of 2026. Neptune is also going to be conjunct the North Node in Pisces when the nodes move into Pisces and Virgo starting in January of 2025, and they'll be conjunct until March of 2025. So, in so many ways, I think the cosmos is calling us to pay attention to that Neptunian energy and how it can guide us in reconnecting with Source, the galactic center, and the North Node, the path that we're meant to be on karmically in this time to support us in shifting into this new age. And you've been doing a deep dive in terms of your connection with Neptunian energy. So share some more about that.
Yeah. With Neptune being squared the galactic center, the first thing that came to me and what feels most honest to me is that Neptunian energy or Piscean energy is being challenged right now. And when I feel into that, I'm like, of course, this makes complete sense because if we're transitioning into an age of Aquarius, well, the abdication of Pisces comes by way of a proper initiation, an initiation. And so this challenge of Piscean energy, for me, that represents the challenge of our spirituality. Our our intuition is being challenged. Our mysticism is being challenged. And if I look at the larger scope of humanity at this time, there seems to be such a great interest in things that are not so much compatible to that. We're coming into this technological explosion and AI and the machines, which tells us a story more aligned to what it means to be, maybe I'll make this word up, in definity, not divinity, definity,
Ooh.
where everything can be solved, where everything can be somehow resulted in a way to which it can be controlled. If
Mm.
I feel into intuition, into spirituality, into mysticism, it cannot be controlled, nor does it need to be controlled. And so it's as if we're being challenged right now so that we can truly reorient ourselves into the reverence once again of what it means to be spiritual, what it means to have intuition, what it means to be a mystic and to play in the fields of mysticism. And so I was just like, oh, this sounds perfectly rational and also fair that we're being challenged right now.
And Ke'oni, say more of what you mean by reverence.
Yes. So for me, reverence is the greatest quality and the most exquisite gift of Piscean energy. What I love about Piscean energy is that Piscean energy is so available for data. It's just available. That's why many would translate Piscean energy as very dreamlike, but it's very available for data. And it can come into deep states of reverence of that to which it's experiencing. And coming back into what it means to revere our spiritual experience, what it means to revere our intuition, what it means to revere mysticism. I feel it's the conversation that's on the table right now for us individually, but also collectively, so that it's not as if we're competing our intuition and our spirituality with the synthetic world of machines and AI. It's not about competition at all. It's just that we maintain, regardless of where we choose to explore and travel, that we remain in a reverence of our spirituality. There must be a reverence of the soul.
Some of what you're saying that is so key, Keoni, is if we look at the sequence of the ages of the processional cycle, they're meant to be guiding us through our evolutionary growth. And we had the age of Aries, which was teaching us about that process of individuation, self expression. But we got caught up in the shadow side of that, which is ego and the desire for control, conquest. And like you're saying, that keeps us from divinity if we're in that need for control. And as we moved into the age of Pisces, it was trying to guide us in letting go of ego, remembering our connection to the soul self, coming back into that reverence and remembrance of the oneness of all that is, to dissolve into that. I think there's also that energy with Pisces and Neptune about trust,
Mhm.
surrender to those energies that are larger to yourself and align with the currents of those energies rather than trying to be in control. But we've not let go of ego and that need for control. So it's led to an out of balance experience of Pisces, which can then be about addiction and delusion and disconnection and dissociation.
Mm.
So part of what you're saying that I think is so important is that in this transition that we're in, we need to reclaim the balanced energy of Pisces and Neptune.
Yes, yes. And also it's so important, right, to even speak into the juvenile aspects of Pisces. For me, the juvenile aspect of Pisces, or even we could say a juvenile aspect or mistranslation or misunderstanding of reverence is worship and subordination. And if we look at the timeline of the age of Pisces, and a lot of the disruptions have been because of this interest and the seduction of worship culture. Even in modern times, pop culture and popular culture, it's all about worship. And so that is the juvenile aspect that we get to reconcile. But the best way, and I love that you brought up trust, because the best way for me to reconcile my reverence is to trust. Because if I trust, I don't need to become subordinate. That's the impetus of all worship, is because I have a sense of subordination rather than coming into trust and then thus being in the experience of that reverence without having to actually compete with anything.
Oh, beautifully said, Keone. And I think it's also about realizing that that energy of the divine is within us. It's not something outside of us that we worship or submit to, it's in us
Mm,
as well as all around us. So,
mm.
how do we come back into that connection and mystical oneness?
Yes, yes. Heather, I would like to maybe even segue this conversation. We're still going to stay on the topic, but I want to further perhaps refine it by bringing in my culture, Mu culture. I would like to go all the way back to the founding, as we can maybe perceive the founding of the Mu civilization. Which is all about the experiment and the exchange and the of what it means to experience love. Okay, so and just to even go all the way far back, the nucleus of the power of the culture of the people, what many may call God, we sometimes refer to it as Kamea Nana Ihana. Well, Kamea Nana Ihana had a spark of awareness, and it was perhaps the first intelligence, and it was a thought. And the thought is, I not only want to be love, I would love to give and receive love as well. And so Kamehameha Ihana, the nucleus, source, God, separated itself from itself so that it could love itself, so that love can be self-reflective. We call this aloha ma. And so the Mu, our archaic ancestors, came to this plane to experiment and experience self-reflective love. And they were in this experiment and experience. And there came a point where it became very almost mechanical and sterile. And so they said, what can we do? What can we do for to refine this experiment and experience? And there was this idea, it's the second idea, and it was, let's infuse something known as meaning. Meaning. Let's design and engineer this thing called meaning. In the language we call it koranama or kaona. And so meaning came about. However, I want to share this about meaning. We would not be having this conversation, Heather. We would not have a relationship. We would not be in the elegance and the exquisiteness of composition and choreography of what it means to be a human being if it wasn't for meaning. So it was destined. However, meaning, like all things, also has a juvenile aspect. And this juvenile aspect is not malicious. We could not have predicted that this would occur, but the juvenile aspect of meaning is to become attached.
Mm.
We came into possession. And so the world to which we were engaging in and referencing in our experiment of self-reflective love, all of a sudden we're like, I don't want to leave it. I need to be here forever. And so, you know how many stories have, or many people will talk about the story of the fall, the fall of Mu. And oftentimes people will refer to this fall as some kind of like war. Um, I just also want to clarify with the audience, and I love to clarify this with myself as well, but war was not always a thing. War did not always exist. It exists
Yes,
now, and it's very loud now, but that doesn't mean it existed in all timelines. That's not true.
very true.
Yes, war did not exist in Mu. It did not. It's inconceivable for them to have engaged or even orchestrated something called war. So what was the fall for Mu? The fall, it's actually literal, Heather. The fall occurred when they became so attached and came into the interest of possession that they disqualified themselves of their own ascension. That's the fall. And so their levitation and the buoyancy to which we once experienced as our light beings, we disqualified ourselves. And I always like remember, my kupuna, my elders, like many indigenous elders, I believe, they only speak to you in riddles. It's often very delayed that you realize what they were sharing by way of your own experience, right? You can't idealize it. But I so much of what my kupuna shared with me when I was a child, really come into perspective for me when I come into my own experiences of what it means for me to be in the favor of possession and for me to have experienced my own fall as well. But that was the fall. And this is so important because what the fall did is it also took us into the experience of the deepest of densities, the deepest of densities. And I'm sure you can attest to this and the audience can attest to this, but the feeling of being a human, sometimes it's so intense.
Mm.
It's so intense and it can be so scary to feel so much that perhaps we've come into an interest of trying to control it. And one of the seductions, right, of the synthetic and simulation culture is that it tells us, it gives us the promise that we can now control our experiences. We can even control the weather. It's a seduction and an interest of control, which means, and I'm bringing this all the way back, which means that we're not in reverence of anything. We're actually in subordination of it. Because the only reason why I would ever want to control something is because I'm also subordinate to it. I'm trying to
Mm.
compete with it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so we really get to reorient ourselves into what it truly means to be in reverence and to revere. And just a reminder, a reminder to myself, but also a reminder to everyone, this is the greatest potential and the most exquisite gift of Pisces. And if we are to transit into the gift that is Aquarius, we must bring with us the legacy of Pisces. We must. And that legacy has a lot to do with true reverence.
This is so profound, Keoni. So it sounds like what you're saying, if I'm understanding you accurately, is that the fall came from our attachment or wanting to be in possession of what we understood rather than being in that relational self, reflecting the soul self of each other and the larger meaning that is the context within which we live and move and breathe,
Mhm.
and that it's oriented towards control,
Yes, yes.
towards that longing for certainty and having things be definite, as you said before, which then does become about an ego way of being that is about control, competition, conquest. And if we're in a hierarchical dynamic, then there's always something above me as well as what's below me. And
Mhm,
that part of what you're describing about the Piscean energy is that it dissolves all of that
mhm,
and allows us then to be in the mystery,
mhm.
in that awareness that we're each a drop of the sea of the consciousness of the cosmos. So there
Yeah,
is no competition. There is no controlling. There is no possession. There's only releasing and dissolving and
yeah,
being in that mystery and in ultimately that awareness that that consciousness of the cosmos is love.
yes. Oh, yes. Exquisite, Heather. The 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 consequence of that sense of possession and attachment is eventually what led to war culture and what happened in the Atlantean timeline, which is what we remember to be the first man-made orchestrated cataclysm, was a result of possession, of attachment, competition. And in that cataclysm, one of the purposes of the cataclysm was to offer a refreshment but yet we find ourselves still fixated in that specific timeline and interest. And so with Pisces and Neptune, especially being squared the galactic center, this is all being challenged right now. You know what the greatest initiator of belief is? To be challenged.
Mm,
To be challenged. And that's why, Heather, I was sharing, like, especially when you brought that to my attention, right? Squaring the galactic center, Neptune, Piscean energy being squared the galactic center, which is wholeness, which is absolute truth. That is being challenged. I'm like, oh, this is fair. This is a proper initiation.
spoken by someone who has Neptune conjunct the galactic center in his chart. So
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
You know what it means to be in alignment with source, and you're helping us as we're in this challenge to remember our alignment with source and with our soul selves.
Mhm.
And let's talk more about the waters
Yeah.
of Neptune and Pisces. And we both are really fascinated by the ancient Sumerian mythology around Neptune and Pisces. So, talk a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I would love to share with the audience the name of Neptune in the Mu culture, which is also has been referred in the Sumerian language as well. And I just love, and we've talked about this before, Heather, too, that the Mu, there's a lot of correlations with ancient Egypt as well. Same name, same dialect, same enunciation of words. It's so beautiful. But the word for Neptune in Mu is Ea. It's E and A, Ea. Now, if I am to translate Ea in modern Hawaiian, it has several meanings. One is sovereignty. Of course, sovereignty in itself is very poetic. So if I were to translate what sovereignty is, it means free knowledge, just free knowledge. That's sovereignty. I'm not subordinate to anyone else's knowledge or a particular kind of knowledge or an agenda. I have access to all knowledge. That's sovereignty. The other translation of Ea is vapor.
Mm, yes.
And I love vapor because vapor is equal parts fire and water. Fire and water. It's even how our cells behave, especially the mitochondria. The mitochondria, which is what produces the energy in our body, it's water, but it's also has just as much power as the sun. And so it's equal parts fire and water. And so I feel as if this water, which many of us remember to be an archive, a database of galactic cosmic knowledge, when I feel that the water, which is carrying this archive, turns into vapor, we're now coming into a distribution, a fair distribution. And then we can come to the other translation of Ea in the Hawaiian language and in Mu dialect, which means sovereignty, free knowledge. And once again, one of the great things about Piscean energy is how available it is for data. It's just available.
This is so beautiful, Keoni, and I love how your ancient wisdom and Mu lineage so comes through. I think there are reflections of it that come through in ancient Sumer and ancient Egyptian culture, but there's such a purity and essence to it in your lineage. But part of what you're talking about that I think is so profound when you talk about the vapor and the free knowledge, you're also talking about that Piscean awareness that when we dissolve our boundaries and that separate sense of self, we have capacity to these other ways of knowing that aren't through our mind and our left brain analytical ways of knowing, but are much more through our right brain intuitive, experiential, shamanic, mystical ways of knowing. And when we tap into those ways of knowing, we have access to all the wisdom of the cosmos.
Mm, yes,
And
yes.
there's nothing to control then. It is all available all around us.
and not even a desire to control, and then we come into like a perception and a culture where control is a relic. And that I feel like as a if there's a trajectory for humanity, for me individually, most certainly, it's that control becomes a relic. And I say relic because it would be unfair to say I'm going to destroy you forever and ever. That's not fair because we've created it, and so we're accountable for it. But it can become a relic. It's something that we can perhaps memorialize as part of the experience of what it means to be a human.
Or, as you said earlier, Keoni, maybe see it as a juvenile step in our development, and that we can, as we're maturing, let that pattern go.
Yes, yes, it is in itself an initiation. It's an initiation. And I feel like, we've been circumnavigating this. There's a kind of density that we've been circumnavigating, and we've been accumulating specific kinds of experiences in order to come to a grand graduation, if you will, right? To come into an assembly of what it means to be a human and then to make a proper assessment. I always liken this to Phoenix energy. Because what the phoenix and the mythology of the phoenix is that the phoenix gathers everything to which it has experienced. Okay, nothing is rejected. Everything has a kind of value to it. It gathers everything, and what does it do with all the knowledge and all the data to which it's participated in? It builds itself a nest, which means it brings it home.
Mm.
It brings it home. It's completely accountable for everything that it's engaged in, everything to which it's experienced. Nothing is favored, nothing is rejected. It brings it all, builds a nest, brings it all home. And then what does it do next? It ignites it. Ignites it. And in the ignition, from that, it becomes refreshed. And so there's this beautiful, beautiful circumnavigation that we're all having right now. And if I may, Heather, I am hosting a three-part series on the significance of Lyra, the
Yes.
constellation of Lyra. And I feel that Lyra speaks volumes. And ooh, that's a pun. Speaks volumes into the sophistication of what the Phoenix is doing, and that perhaps our birthright, each and every one of us, and as a collective, is to behave as that Phoenix, to build that nest, to make a proper assessment, bring it all home in an assembly, ignite it, and then become refreshed. I truly feel humanity, we're destined to become refreshed.
We want to circle back to Lyra, but what you just said, Keoni, just gives me chills. I mean, what you're saying is so profound because 12,000 years ago, when we had that moment of transition and initiation at the time of Atlantis, we took the path of control, of attachment, of possession, of ego. And so the time of refreshment was a cataclysmic crisis to reset the earth and humanity, to try to support us in this evolutionary process. Here we are now at this next critical juncture in the precessional cycle, and we can either choose to reenact that juvenile way of being and cling to control and try to master our way through this. And then we will, as happened in Atlantis, go through another cataclysmic reset. Or we can go through the initiation and, like the phoenix, burn what needs to be let go of, let it die to emerge in a radically new, transformed way.
Mm.
But as you said, to do that requires trust and reverence
Yeah.
and opening to that cosmic consciousness and divine love of the cosmos.
Yes, and gosh, and the Phoenix really behaves in such a beautiful way in that, as it gathers its experiences, it does its own circumnavigation of its initiation of what it means to be for you and I, what it means to be a human being, right? It doesn't reject anything. I feel like that in itself is a kind of reverence because I'm not subordinate. If I need to reject something, I'm immediately subordinate to it because somehow it threatens me.
Mm,
So it gathers everything. It's accountable for everything. Perhaps even reverence has a lot to do with accountability. It's accountable for everything. It creates a home of that, a home of that. But it doesn't stay stagnant in that home. It knows that there's a greater trajectory, but it gathers everything. There's an assembly, and then it ignites it. Ignites it. One thing that I love about ignition with this conversation is, that's what turns everything into vapor, into steam.
yes.
And so there's a distribution now, which is, I feel like, gosh, what a beautiful way to memorialize that to which we're transiting out of. That's what we are evolving from, is to memorialize it as a fair distribution, to free it, to free it.
Well, and some of what you're saying also that's so profound is accepting the wholeness of who we are, the wholeness of all that is, honoring all that we've experienced in the journey. So, not getting caught in polarization, not splitting off any aspect of humanity or our experience or ourselves, but honoring that wholeness, but then surrendering to that process of initiation and transmutation.
Mm, mm. Gosh, I'm just feeling like such a grand invitation. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but of course, inviting others to have this experience, but to really come into the reverence of my own experience and a reverence of the experience of this beautiful human event that we're all having. Like what does that feel like? What does that look like to come into deep reverence of that and knowing that Pisces is supporting us in that? That is the gift of Pisces. And we've been in Pisces for so long, and our relationship has come to that point where now we get to exchange gifts, right? And Pisces is offering us this gift. It says it's called reverence. It's called reverence. I offer you reverence. And I feel like, you know what? I feel like our gift to Pisces in exchange is just to receive it.
Mm, mm, beautiful. To receive it and to melt into that mystery. And to me, another aspect of reverence is awe.
Yes.
And awe is the beginning of wisdom.
Ah, yes. Yes, sister, because it does not it's immune to control. Awe is immune to control. One thing that I really find fascinating, because if we talk about the names of planets, right, is the Uranus, which is very Aquarian, right? It's like a hub of Aquarian energy. Uranus, the name for Uranus in Mu is Anu. It's Anu. And in the dialect, if we were to translate Anu, it means cool, but cool as in to neutralize, to neutralize. And I love that, even the play on words, right? If I am that phoenix and I ignite and then I refresh, I offer myself anew.
That is great. And
Right?
and Anu is also the sky deity in ancient Sumerian. So again, that connection back to the Mu lineage.
Yeah, the
But I
the
love
the water of Neptune, right? And then the Anu, right? That the frequency, the air. Yeah, the sky god. Mhm.
But come back to Lyra and how this
Yes.
is helping us in this whole initiation process, because this is huge what you're teaching in March. And I'm going to put the link below so that people know the dates of it's 3 classes. Is that correct? In
Yes.
March?
I'm sharing a three-part series, just speaking into what does it mean for us to also evolve into an age of Lyra. And I say age of Lyra because in the Mu and Hawaiian culture, our medicine wheel is actually star lineages. And we've had four star lineages. So we've had Draco, Mataroro, we've had Arcturus, Hokulea, Sirius, Aa, and we've had Makali'i or the Pleiades. And we've been sitting comfortable with these for some time. And now all of a sudden, Lyra, what we call Ke'oi or Umak in the Mu dialect, it's now suggesting that it is an actual star lineage and that we are now transiting into the age of Lyra. And so this three-part series is really exploring, reconciling, what does that mean for us? And the name Ke'oi, which is the name not just for Lyra, but also for Vega. And the same thing with the name with the Mu dialect. Umak is not just Lyra, but Vega, which this suggests is that Vega is really the centerpiece. It's really the consolidation of the energetics of Lyra. And so that's why they're one and the same. The name Ke'oi, if we translate that, it means back to you, back
Oh,
to And umak, the mu, it translates as to experience and to witness a completion. Now, this is significant because the first star lineage is Draco Mataroro, and it's actually the closest neighbor to Lyra. And so it's as if we began somewhere, we've done a circumnavigation. We've been talking a lot in the past, 40 minutes about completing a circumnavigation, completing a kind of initiation. And now we're coming back to this point where it's meeting itself. So there's a kind of completion, even the translation in Mu, to witness, to experience a completion. And so just like the phoenix, remember the phoenix, it's now assembling all of its experiences, the deepest of densities, the emotions, the feelings, what it means to be a human being. It's assembling everything. It's creating and making an assessment. And then it's doing an ignition. And then we're becoming refreshed. And in my own conversations with Lyra, with Ke'oi, and in my own deep, deep memory, and I go into my iwi kuamo'o, I go into my spinal cord and I locate, where is that located in my iwi kuamo'o? It's located all the way at the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, which would suggest that it's at the highest point of the spinal column, because in our culture, the glands are also part of the iwi kuamo'o, the spinal cord, but it's also located at my huelo, or my tailbone, the coccyx.
mm.
So it's at both ends. And some of the conversations that are coming through for me about Lyra is that it has a lot to do with calendar reform. Now, even when there's something's completed itself, we're completely honoring a circumnavigation of something. So now we're in an orbit. And I believe that Lyra has something it wants to share with us about calendar reform.
What's so exquisite about what you're saying, Keoni, is, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording, that when we track the precessional cycle, that completion comes at the end of 24,000 years, where we are now, and it's a circle around the pole star, as well as the shift and the constellations as they move through what's rising at the time of the March equinox. But and Draco and Lyra are circumpolar stars. So it's that we have come to that completion of that circuit around the pole star to now be at this time of initiation, this time of completion and moving into a new way of being. And I wonder if Lyra, in terms of that shift in calendar time, is guiding us into a new understanding of space and time.
Most certainly. And that's what I've been feeling deeply because it's bringing up a lot about the experiment, because every lineage has an experiment that it blesses humanity with, and we are to experience that and we are to enforce that. One of the experiments that's coming up for me with Lyra is actually paradox. Paradox. And so, you know, that that conversation is a conversation that hasn't happened in any of the star lineages. And so it feels ripe that we come into this experiment of what it means to be in paradox, which also means that we get to relinquish the sense of control. Because if control is loud for us, there's no room for paradox. There's paradox will be rejected. The Oh, go ahead, Heather.
And tell me what you mean by paradox. Do you mean in the sense of holding the polarities in a way that may not make rational sense to us, but it is a part of the wholeness?
Yes, and also the paradox of timelessness.
Ah,
Timelessness.
living in time, but being timeless.
Yes, timelessness. And so, like I'm still in my infant stages with just like inviting this in, and I would love for, the community to just begin conversations with yourself and then with others about what that represents. I feel like the best way for us to really honor anything is to bring it into relevance. That's truly the best way to honor something is to bring it into relevance, just to start talking about it. And I feel like that will allow you to become locatable, right? For this energy of Lyra to locate you and then perhaps even infuse you with some of the things, the key points, the principles, and the qualities that get to be discussed at this time. This is colossal what's happening for humanity right now. And I was telling Heather in our private conversation, it's so cool. I like was on the brink of like psychosis. And like they started to come in. I was like, I really have to cope.
You may not know this, Keoni, but my doctoral dissertation was that fine line between psychosis and mysticism. And the difference is the mystic, that's you, is able to hold those powerful downloads and integrate them and ground them, as
Mm.
opposed to getting overwhelmed by them. But I mean, the wisdom, the energy and remembrance that's coming to you is profound.
It it's so exciting. And one of the things that I'd love to share in regards to Lyra too is, our modern translation of the legacy or the lineage of Lyra is probably best documented by the Greeks. And with the story of Orpheus, right? Orpheus, the way that Lyra came about was because Orpheus, in his deep density or in his deep grief, he was weeping so much that he even created all the water that he became submerged in and that everyone became submerged in what can be translated as the underworld. And from that water, right, how did it go? From the water that he created, his lyre or his harp, his musical instrument or his song was held in the water. Now, the way that that was transferred to the cosmos is that the eagle was sent to retrieve the lyre or the song of the density or the experiences of Orpheus. Remember that initiation, the circumnavigation of everything to which he experienced. Retrieved that from the water. The water is an archive, placed it into the cosmos so that it could become dispersed and distributed. And so I even love this modern translation and the modern legacy of Lyra, which the Greeks have documented, speaks so beautifully into what it means for us to be in such deep density with our feelings, our experiences, and then purging that where it can become properly distributed and dispersed by way of our song.
Mm, so beautiful that then for each of us, that soul song becomes a part of the music of the spheres.
Mm.
And that part of what you're describing too, and maybe this is part of the paradox of Lyra, is that that soul song comes out of the density and all of our tears and emotions and the full range of our human experience in mortality, but then we dissolve into that timelessness of immortality and hold the both and.
Hmm. There's Heather, there's so many different references to Lyra as being a memorial of music, a memorial of music. And so even coming back into our individual song, and even if we bring in, reverence to revere our song and to revere the collective song and to let that be distributed. When I feel like, okay, how is a song distributed? By it being sung.
Shared. And it's really tied in with that understanding that everything is vibration and everything is a part of that frequency and sound of our own experience, but how it is a part of the consciousness of the cosmos.
Oh my gosh. And many people correlate and remember Lyra to be feline in energy, this feline energy. And so when I explored that myself, I'm like, well, what are some of the behaviors of the felines? Well, they're always singing because their purr is a vibration. And so their body is vibrating that song. They are the keepers of the song, and they do that by the behavior of their body. But I also want to say into the feline energy, the phoenix, the more and more that I begin to remember this Lyran energy, the more and more I'm leaning into Phoenix energy because the Phoenix has commonly been referred to as this bird, but also it's so interesting because the Phoenix or this bird has not just wings or feathers, but also scales and fur. And so I feel as if the Phoenix is really the dragon because we're bringing in Draco energy, the dragon, the feline energy, which so many people remember Lyra to be. Yes, but also the bird. So it's this trinity that is compiling and assembling itself as the phoenix.
Oh, extraordinary. Extraordinary. And when you talk about that feline part and the purr, it's also that awareness that for felines, that purr is healing, it's self-healing. So
Mm,
as we reclaim our soul song, we heal on all levels.
mm.
But I
God,
love that sense of the Trinity of and that's the integration of some of those most ancient archetypes of the great goddess the of the great creator,
mm,
the bird and the serpent or the dragon in particular.
yes, yes, yes. Oh, thank you for bringing that piece in about the self-healing, because that for me is reverence. If we are in the interest of being our own healer, that's reverence right there. And so, like, even that, the behavior of that feline that is in the interest of its own self-healing, and that song is that to which is healing it. It's like you are literally watching reverence. Mm.
And talk about the fern that helps us connect to reverence.
Oh, well, it is kupu kupu fern. I have it right here. And so in my medicine, hua ehu ehu, and this comes through my lineage, but ferns hold the codes to human emotions. And human emotions, when I speak into human emotions and emotional intelligence, it's all about voltage. It's voltage because you and I were having an electrical experience. And for you and I as human beings, the greatest impetus and stimulant for our voltage or electricity is our emotions. And so this fern in particular holds the codes to reverence. And so it does speak about the power of reverence. And here's what I want to share about reverence and what Kupu Kupu would like to share. The great quality of reverence is that reverence is how you and I allow ourselves to become informed. So it has a lot to do with how we engage with information. That to which you and I revere is that to which will inform us.
Mm.
But we also have to be really responsible about this because that's not always pleasant. Because the prerequisite for reverence is first interest. What do I find interesting? Perhaps for some of us, we find inadequacy, war, greed interesting. And that's what will become to revere, or the juvenile aspect of reverence, that's what we come to worship. And so we get to really, really reconcile what is it that I truly find interesting through the day. And in my dialogue with Kupu Kupu, Kupu Kupu will always challenge me with that. Says, oh, don't bypass. You want to come right to reverence and be pleasant. Okay, get it, yes. But first, what is interesting to you?
Mm.
You have to reconcile that first before you come into reverence, because it may not be true reverence. You may be in subordination and worship.
And that's so profound what you said about how what we then worship or are in reverence to informs us. So then it shapes who we are.
Yes,
And what we're focused on then is what we manifest.
yes, most
And
certainly.
so then we just manifest more war, more violence, whatever it is we're getting caught up in, we just emanate that.
Right. You know, this is a real mature conversation we get to have with ourselves. I've had this with myself as well. But knowing what occupies my day, what are the thoughts that are occupying my day? Because obviously that's what I find most interesting. That's what's going to inform me throughout my day and my days. And so really creating a pivot first, right? A pivot. Just pause and then really reorient oneself into what is truly meaningful and important and honest to me, and to how I feel I can participate with this beautiful, interactive, phenomenal experience we're all having, and then create a kind of devotion to that, a pattern to that. And thus we come into our own reverence. So, reverence is how we are informed. And so, really coming into that recognition, what do you find interesting throughout the day? Because that is ultimately what you revere or what you worship.
Mm, beautiful, Keoni. So we have to take responsibility for what we're focused on and what we attend to and see how that links to what we worship or what we're in reverence to.
Yeah, and you know, Heather, I want to just share with myself, you and the audience, we also get to have fun with it. Because I feel like sometimes, right, we're so easily burdened by so much. And so, like, I get to have fun with reorienting myself into that which I find interesting, that to which I know is naturally what I know to be most interesting. I get to have fun with coming into reverence. I get to enjoy the reception of reverence from this age of Pisces so that I can be part of the perpetuation of its legacy. Because here's Aquarius, and Aquarius says, as you enter my realm, where's my gift? Where's my gift? Well, I have it. It's Pisces. I'm transferring reverence to Aquarius.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love too this whole theme and what you're saying about, in the enjoyment also comes in letting go and being in the currents of the Piscean waters to trust that they're carrying us where we need to go when we surrender to them and allow ourselves to be at one with them. Then it's not so effortful anymore. We
Yeah,
let go of control.
yes, yes. Relax into it. Relax into it. Allow yourself to be carried. That's what affluence means. Affluence literally means to be in flow. So we can all just come into our own affluence, celebrate not just our affluence, but the affluence of a collective. This is not a competition.
Mm.
This is not a competition. This thing called life. Let's celebrate our shared affluence.
And that our shared life and this love of the Piscean Neptunian energy that is in us and all around us, if we receive it and open to it.
Yes, yes. And thank you so much, Heather, for bringing us all the way back to just let's just all revere this transition that we're all experiencing right now from Pisces into Aquarius. You know, the uh, many of us believe that we are coming into an age of Aquarius because Aquarius is orienting itself with Pluto. Um, and the name for Pluto in the ancient language is Gaga. And if we were to translate Gaga into English, it means to be carefree, to be carefree. And I
Wow.
even feel into, Plutonian energy. It really knows how to get deep into things, which also allows it to be fearless, fearless. It's that initiation and by way of trial and error that we finally become carefree.
And I would say Pluto also resonates with the energy of that phoenix, you know,
Yes.
let it ignite and transmute.
Yeah.
This is so profound, Keoni. We could talk for hours, but I know we. And is there any prayer or anything that you would like to end with to support us as we connect to reverence and these gifts of the age of Pisces and Neptune?
Yeah. I would love to honor, thank you. I would love to honor Pisces. Remember, one of the things that I really admire about Piscean energy is how available it is for data and information, which means it's also available for exploring potential. And it doesn't so much play favorites. It just allows itself to be immersed in what potential is. There's another fern. This fern is called Pe'ahi, and Pe'ahi is the fern of chaos. Chaos. Chaos just means wisdom, wisdom. And if I may, I would love to share a transmission of Pe'ahi fern.
Absolutely.
Expression proliferates within the meaning of wholeness. Wholeness has already been determined. From erratic places, the chambers of dreams and witness, my inhale commands you return. The ceremony of my great inhale is the reoccurrence of the wisdom of all creation. Should you believe in the recall, this is flow state. I have assumed the Lady of the Dawn, the psychomythic representation of the power of the human spirit. Won't you recognize the great movement of the meaning, or will you devour the very center of humanity? My dream has always been to consume myself. You are felt and you are recognized. Aloha ma.
Thank you, Keoni. And thank you to all who are listening. Blessings and love to all of you.
Aloha ma.